Next, we have a talk from Nathan Arhat, works at DXDAO. The talk is entitled DAOs and Public Goods and DeFi.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to my TED Talk. My name is Nathan, and I'm one of the numerous known and unknown contributors at the global remote-only sovereign collective, DXDAO. Those are not just empty words, they bear important meaning. Today we're going to talk about DAOs and public goods in DeFi, Web3, and in general, and draw a distinction between profit extraction and value creation. Most of you are familiar with the tragedy of the commons. I'll be mostly having my head down reading because I'm a bit of a scatterbrain. If I don't read, I'll go off topic. So please excuse me. Back in 1968, the essay, The Tragedy of the Commons by the ecologist Garrett Hardin argued that human overpopulation will stress ecosystems beyond their limits and cause a resource catastrophe. It's a problem in economics occurring when individuals neglect the well-being of society in pursuit of personal gain. We also have this in game theory. The tragedy of the commons is seen as the Nash equilibrium, where no rational agent cooperates, despite it actually being the strategy that would maximize the collective payoff if adopted by all players. And what was Hardin's solution proposed as a possible way out of the tragedy of the commons? And he was saying we should cede our freedoms to the state and be bound by mutual coercion, mutually agreed upon. However, if we look into it, agreed upon involves trust. And in crypto, we say, don't trust, verify. So when you give someone complete control, whatever was mutually agreed upon can be revoked at any time. Back in the 19th century, the English historian Lord Acton had said, power tends to corrupt. And we all know absolute power corrupts absolutely. So Elon Musk recently said in an interview, the government is simply the biggest corporation with monopoly on legitimate force, and we should be careful if we want to give them the ultimate power and trust them with managing our resources, but that's unfortunately what we have nowadays. And all of these smart people that have been working on these problems, busting their heads, they didn't know of blockchain, and nowadays we have blockchain, so we can experiment and see if we could have this work out. Elinor Ostrom, the first woman to be awarded the Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences, argued that common resources can be well managed. There's not necessarily a doom and gloom scenario where we have ultimate tragedy of the commons, and those who benefit from the resources should be in close proximity to that resource. For her, the tragedy only occurred when external groups exerted their power, whether that's political, economical, or social, in order to gain a personal advantage. And so she argues and proposes this plan forward as a solution to managing common resources. The features of successful systems, Ostrom and her colleagues find, include clear boundaries, reliable monitoring of shared resources, a reasonable balance of costs and benefits for stakeholders, a predictable process for the fast and fair resolution of conflicts, an escalating series of punishments for cheaters, and a good relationship between the community and other layers of authority. That's from household heads to international institutional bodies. So these rules for managing the commons are established to maintain the long-term sustainability of resources, and this way there's no need for government to step in or also no need to move into the opposite polar direction of having complete privatization. These are the two extremes, and the truth lies in between. But when we think about those guiding tenets for sustainable resource management, they sound a lot like a protocol. And protocols are sets of rules and guidelines for communicating data. And back in the days, those were verbal agreements or put on paper, but nowadays we have this amazing technology called blockchain that allows us to have those protocols and have them trustless. So smart contracts, on-chain governance systems, specifically on decentralized distributed ledgers. Some might argue, well, isn't distributed decentralized? No, they're different. Those are words that bear special meaning, and we have to be careful using them. So all of these systems can serve as censorship-resistant protocols, giving communities sovereignty and autonomy to coordinate, self-organize themselves trustlessly, which in effect enables collective ownership, development, and governance of public goods. In May 2014, Vitalik Buterin wrote, "Instead of a hierarchical structure managed by a set of humans interacting in person and controlling property via the legal system, a decentralized organization involves a set of humans interacting with each other according to a protocol specified in code and enforced on the blockchain." This is the technological revolution we have in our hands today, the innovation that we're testing out to prove to the world that this could be the future of organizing societies. And so there's a bit of a schism in crypto, with a lot of people debating what a DAO or a DAO really is or isn't. It has become somewhat of a spectrum. Many people have misused the term, many people have misunderstood it, many people have been misinforming people. They try to frame it the way that it suits them for marketing purposes. Generally, the A in DAO is not automated. It's accepted generally as autonomous. And the two are very different. If it's automated, you don't really need organization, but DAO has an O in it, and it stands for organization. And what an organization is, those are people. And those people need autonomy, not automation. There is automation, but the organization needs autonomy, and autonomy is a synonym for sovereignty or censorship resistance. There's no one above you that you bow down to and tells you what to do. You have the ultimate freedom. Sovereign individuals comprising a self-organized sovereign collective with the purpose of collectively owning, developing, and governing censorship-resistant protocols and applications. That is what a DAO is. And nowadays, many applications are not decentralized, they're fragile, they're not managed by DAOs, and I would argue that is not DeFi. Vitalik, another quote from Vitalik, an AI is completely autonomous, I would say automated, whereas a DAO still requires heavy involvement from humans, specifically interacting according to a protocol defined by the DAO in order to operate. And I would add here, it's easier said than done. There are very important prerequisites, and those, I would say, are the distribution of power and trustless setups. The zeitgeist. So, as of late, for many years, the zeitgeist has been short-term profit extraction. which has led to tragedy of the commons. If we see the earth as this global resource, we've kind of like mismanaged, misused, and abused severely for personal gain over common good. And unfortunately, the way the economy works nowadays, the global economy, economic incentives actually encourage behavior that is counterproductive to humanity. It will bite us in the ass. Actually, it's pretty avid nowadays. We see what's happening with economic crisis, ecological disasters. So for the last, say, 100 years, one could have made money to create a perfect bubble for themselves. But nowadays, problems seem to surface globally everywhere, affecting everything and everyone. And those that have been chasing profit at any cost and their loved ones would likely be affected just as everyone else. Now, you cannot just buy a $100 million yacht and go into some sea. There's going to be some climate disaster that will get to you. You can move from one place, but there'll be fires. You'll move to another place, there'll be an earthquake. You'll move to another place, there's going to be flooding. It's no longer as easy to just make some money and go create a bubble for yourself and escape from the world that you helped destroy. So we need a new Gestalt mindset, seeing the whole as greater than the parts. And I would argue long-term, it is actually in the interest of individuals as well. So if one is smart enough, even if they are egotistical, if they just have this long-term mindset, it's in their best personal interest to work together with society. In his essay on hyperstructures, the co-creator of Zora, Jacob Horn, states, while it is entirely possible to extract profits in the short term, this is likely in direct conflict with long-term success and value creation. So he envisions a system which recognizes that the value created and provided to society at large by far exceeds any amount of profits that can be extracted in the immediate term. Many teams struggle, we see in crypto, Web3, DeFi, teams struggle having to sell their own token to cover operational expenses, to avoid tanking the price. They get themselves into a shilling mode that, they try to counter the sell pressure, and this isn't what builders should worry about. It's even more severe and critical in a bear market like the one we're probably in right now. Dumping a token that is already severely undervalued, it's just crazy. And the focus should fall solely on development and improving product quality instead of dealing with VCs chasing checks and pumping tokens. So what should team focus on? I think we'll all agree on the fact that teams should just keep building and not get distracted by worrying about money. So, public goods. Funding for public goods is not popular. Stock prices don't move on universal notion of value to society. Prices move on the speculator's own perspective of product value, or often, let's be honest, how much they can extract arbitraging, pumping and dumping. So we need more engineers from big tech corporations to feel comfortable joining open source projects, not as a weekend hobby, but perceive it as a serious, well-paid work. Currently, public goods are not popular, funding is not secured, they're not taken seriously, and unfortunately, we're just relying on altruistic hobbyists. I've had a ton of people say they're still wondering whether it's the right decision to jump ship, leave their work in traditional finance or software development and join crypto or Web3, and it just doesn't speak well for the space. DeFi matters. Why does DeFi matter? What is a free market? And so we're using the term freely here. It's an economic system, that's the definition, in which prices are determined by unrestricted competition between privately owned businesses. And we all know, no matter what our minor or major in university, we've all had like economic courses. We know about the invisible hand. So the British moral philosopher Adam Smith used the metaphor invisible hand for the unseen forces that move the free market economy. Now, how can we have both free market and unseen forces? Like if those forces are hidden and we can't verify them and it's not trustless, there's blind trust. And that's why there are bad actors, and that's why there's manipulation. That's why we have banks working with cartels, money laundering. And I have no clue why regulators are going against blockchain tech, DeFi, when we actually are solving all those problems. Public goods should not be synonymous with nonprofit. Public goods can have investors, they can generate returns for stakeholders. They just need to prioritize long-term ecosystem value creation versus short-term profit extraction. So that calls for patient capital, long-term investment versus the hedge fund trading mindset, 3 arrows capital, pumping, exiting, manipulating markets, acting as crypto Twitter influencers. DAOs are perfect for this. They're really well suited. Trustlessly governing resources, development. There's just a need for a secret sauce, a special ingredient. DAO. In 2019, that's more than 3 years ago. But it's boring. No one knows about it. Gnosis and DAOstack introduced DXDAO to the world. It's an independent organization with its own life and identity. Using a highly scalable, decentralized, on-chain governance system, which leverages the holographic consensus, DXDAO was formed as a DAO first. So it was very prescient back then from Gnosis. And the sole purpose initially of forming this sovereign collective that is censorship resistant was to own and govern the decentralized exchange that checks exchange. And we've seen nowadays so many DeFi applications that are like protocols that mostly have their users access them through the centralized front ends, get hijacked, they get DNS hacks, and this is something that was solved by Gnosis by allowing a censorship-resistant autonomous organization to govern a protocol and own the front end 3 years ago. Sadly, it's not caught up. It was created by distributing voting power to a wide number of Ethereum addresses across the globe in order to manage funds trustlessly from the get-go. DXDAO coordinates ownership, development, and governance of open source protocols and applications on-chain. And what is unique about DXDAO is that unconventionally, it's actually using voting power in the form of non-transferable reputation. We've seen Vitalik post lately about soul-bound tokens, soul-bound governance, moving away from liquid token governance. So DXDAO has been doing this for more than 3 years already. It cannot be bought, sold, delegated. It's inflationary, and it can only be earned through direct contributions to the community. This serves as a protection against financially powerful entities, which could easily buy liquid tokens and attempt to exert unbalanced governance power for possible malicious purposes. However, although they can permissionlessly submit governance proposals and participate in discussions, honest stakeholders that have provided capital to the DAO cannot directly participate in voting, and we are highly critical of ourselves, and we see that the current setup falls short on accountability to investors. That's why the DAO has recognized that and ratified a new framework dubbed Governance 2.0, which I argue is the secret sauce that could help a lot of communities in the future. It aims to create a sustainable system as a feedback loop for all relevant stakeholders, and it will align the interest of both investors, token holders, and the core contributors who hold reputation in the DAO. So that was a bit of a mouthful. I hope it was interesting. If anyone has got any questions.
Thank you so much. We have about 5 minutes for a Q&A, so if you have any questions,
Cheers.
Go for it.
Yeah, maybe I could add, if we don't have any questions, developers in DeFi, they need not focus on centrally hosting their front ends and risking censorship by regulators, out of fear, self-regulating themselves, angering their users, being susceptible to hijackings and risking hundreds of millions and billions of dollars of their users. They have this amazing sovereign collective that is censorship resistant, and they can easily have their front ends owned by the DAO so that no government body or regulator could exert their power over them. And I believe this should be the future of DeFi. This is a public good, and it doesn't require a lot of resources, actually. So if you go to DXDAO's Twitter page, there's a pinned tweet with a really nice animated video explaining just how DXDAO owns its front ends and how they're censorship resistant and unstoppable. Thank you.
Nathan, thank you so much.